At 1 a.m. on April 26, 1986, the streets across the Soviet Union were quiet. Millions of families were asleep, unaware that the air around them was about to change. In northern Ukraine, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was the center of this region's energy grid. Its 4 massive reactors provided enough electricity to power roughly 10% of the entire republic. While surrounding towns slept, the night shift inside Reactor 4 began a specialized safety test to see if the turbines could still power water pumps during a blackout. Because the plant's design was considered reliable by the state, the engineers and nearby residents lived with a sense of security that left them entirely unprepared for a mechanical failure of this scale. The test took place here, in the Reactor 4 control room. It was meant to be a routine check of the backup systems. To keep the test running as power levels fluctuated, the operators manually pulled out nearly all of the reactor's control rods. By disabling the automatic shutdown systems, they bypassed the core's physical safety limits. At 1:23 a.m., the water used to cool the core turned instantly to steam. Without the control rods or the cooling water to restrain it, the reactor's power surged to over 100 times its normal operating capacity in seconds. A massive steam explosion shattered the reactor, throwing the 1,000-ton upper shield right through the roof. The blast ejected white-hot chunks of radioactive graphite directly into the night sky. The explosion destroyed the building structure, but it also created a thermal updraft. This updraft began carrying a massive, invisible plume of radioactive isotopes into the upper atmosphere. Within minutes, local firefighters arrived at the site. They were told they were responding to a simple roof fire and began climbing the ladders to contain the flames. They were standing directly on top of the ruined reactor, working in a field of debris that was emitting massive levels of ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation is a high-energy form of radiation that can strip electrons from atoms, causing direct damage to living tissue. These particles passed through the firefighters' canvas uniforms and into their bodies, attacking their cells while they fought the fire. Because their exposure levels were so high, many of these men began to feel the effects of acute radiation sickness within hours. Most of them would not survive the week. These men were sent to the roof without dosimeters or warnings. They died because the officials in charge refused to admit the reactor had been breached, even as the evidence lay in pieces at the firefighters' feet. A few hours later, the sun rose over Pripyat, a city built specifically to house the plant's workers and their families. Despite the smoke rising from a plant just 2 miles away, children went to school and families met to enjoy the warm spring morning. For 36 hours, life in the city continued as normal. During this time, every person in Pripyat was inhaling air that was heavily contaminated with radioactive dust. The delay in warning the public was intentional. Local authorities and plant managers prioritized the appearance of stability, ordering the police to block telephone lines and prevent news of the accident from spreading. By remaining silent, the officials ensured that the local population continued to eat, sleep, and breathe in a high radiation zone for over a day after the danger was known. The silence finally broke on the afternoon of April 27th. A fleet of over 1,000 buses arrived in the city, and a radio announcement finally ordered a mandatory evacuation. Nearly 50,000 residents were given 2 hours to pack their essentials. They boarded the buses, leaving their pets, photos, and lives behind, thinking they would return in 3 days. They never did. This map shows how the radioactive plume drifted. Once it reached Sweden, nearly 800 miles away, specialized sensors detected the isotopes. The secret was now a global crisis that could no longer be denied. Radioactive particles like iodine-131 follow the path of the wind, not the orders of a government. Once the plume crossed international borders, the attempt to keep the accident a local secret became a physical impossibility. Today, the area around the plant is known as the exclusion zone, a wasteland where nature reclaims the empty streets. Inside Pripyat's abandoned apartments, decaying furniture and left-behind belongings serve as a record of families whose lives were permanently disrupted in a single weekend. The radioactive isotopes released that late are still present in the soil and the structures, and the area will remain unsafe for human habitation for thousands of years. The disaster at Chernobyl was the result of a safety test where protocol was abandoned for the sake of speed. The permanent evacuation of this region stands as a reminder of the massive cost when the risks of complex technology are managed with silence rather than honesty.